So here we go.
Okay, so I've shared my screen. Hopefully everybody can see, and it's 10 past, so I declare the meeting started. Off you go, Carolyn.
All right, moving on to let's get to the agenda. It looks big, but we'll flow through it pretty quickly. I'm not going to bother running through each one, but just to give you an idea of the different topics we're going to be covering, bearing in mind that I'm coming from a Canadian Ski Instructor Alliance background, but CADS up until now has slowly integrated all of the methodologies and thoughts of the CSIA, and they've been doing that over the years. And from what I hear now is they may actually remove themselves a bit from it, but overall it's the same stuff. It's the same old stuff. So let's move on to the next slide, Colin. So this is a video, and I've played with on and off whether I wanted to use this video, but after I watched it 2 or 3 times, I thought, you know what, this really gives me a really good understanding of the principles of skiing, why we change direction, how we move. It gives us an understanding of how we should be standing on our skis and our center of mass. So I thought, we're going to play it. It's only 5 minutes long. And it's something that will be posted on the CADS NCD site so that you can go back and look at it again, because I've been teaching all my life, well, not all my life, but a long time. And I still had to go back. And every time I actually look at it, I get more from it. So take it away, Colin. Let's watch the video and we'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay, I rely on you, Carolyn, to tell me if any of the sound isn't coming through. But
okay, so far so good. I hear the sound.
In 1687, Sir Isaac Newton released a set of theories which changed the world forever. For over 3 centuries, the predictions made by his laws of motion have held firm against scientific scrutiny and led to countless examples of incredible human achievement. Mechanized flight, traveling to and landing on the moon, setting the ISS into orbit around the Earth, and arguably the most impressive accomplishment of all, the perfect wedge turn. Okay, so maybe that last one is a bit of a stretch, but believe it or not, the laws that govern large-scale events of our universe are exactly the same as those which enable skiers to move freely around the mountain. Exploring and understanding the basic principles at play within our sport can help any ski instructor be more accurate and effective in how they think about and make decisions around developing skiing. Now, there's a lot to learn here, so for now, let's keep it simple and consider just a few ideas. Journey through the physics of skiing begins with a chairlift ride. With every passing tower, our bodies accumulate more and more potential energy. Work is done by the chairlift upon our mass, and this energy is what drives our motion. Once at the top of the chair, the force of gravity begins converting potential energy into kinetic energy by accelerating our mass along a single line of motion. An equilibrium is reached when the forces of friction, like our skis against the snow and the air against our bodies, exert on our mass an equal and opposite force to that of gravity. Skydivers in freefall experience this as terminal velocity, and it marks the moment at which no further acceleration can occur. Assuming terminal velocity is rarely our preferred state while skiing, at some point other forces must intervene and push on us so that we can begin to control the speed and direction of our mass. For this to happen, we have to change the orientation of our skis on the snow against our line of motion. We do this through muscular effort, and when we do, we produce the key ingredient for turning: a steering angle. Through the use of rotational control actions, a steering angle establishes the potential for direction change. When combined with edging, a reaction force from the snow is produced that can serve all of our speed and direction control needs. This force pushing on us from the snow is referred to as the ground reaction force, which is actually not just one, but rather a combination of forces simplified into a single trajectory. The three main component forces are a turning component, which pushes us across the hill, a slowing component, which resists the force of gravity pulling us down the hill, and a perpendicular component, which resists our weight and keeps us connected to the surface of the snow. It's through our blend of skills that we harness these forces to varying degrees to control our speed, direction, or both. For example, a turn that is carved conserves more momentum than one that is drifted because it has more of the turning component and less of the slowing component. On the other hand, if we twist our skis far enough across our line of motion, we can eliminate the turning component entirely and simply oppose the force of gravity along its own vector. In this case, we can manage speed without changing direction at all. By blending these components in varying amounts, we can determine A, where we want to go, and B, how quickly we want to get there, as the system described here offers enough versatility to manage every possible scenario that requires a change in speed, direction, or both. As we become familiar with the idea of ground reaction force, we can view its trajectory as a reference for balance. We are said to be in balance when the trajectory of the force coming up from the ground passes between our feet and through our center of mass. The more force that's present within a turn, the more important it becomes to establish a stable state of balance. But in skiing, it's often necessary to create imbalance as well, as a means of setting our center of mass and base of support along their own respective pathways. The independence of these two pathways is integral to us being able to turn at all. This intentional unbalancing is referred to as toppling. When the ground reaction force trajectory moves above our center of mass, we'll be able to move towards the center of the turn. And when it dips below it, we'll move away from the center of the turn. So by manipulating this relationship, we're able to control how far inside the arc we wish to travel, as well as how quickly we wish to travel from one arc to the next. Sir Isaac Newton is among the greatest thinkers who have ever lived. And if his laws of motion have taught us anything, it's that physics offers the truth, nothing more and nothing less. In the same way that air and space travel were achieved through an immense amount of thought, time, and experimentation, we encourage you to read, discuss, explore, and experiment with these concepts in your own skiing and teaching. As ski instructors, familiarity with the rules of physics in our sport can serve to guide us to greater knowledge and skill through unbiased consideration of how skiing works.
So you'll notice that was filmed at Mount Pakenham. Little bit of joke. It's a lot to take in, this video, and obviously when we're working with our athletes, especially those that have challenges, physical challenges or mental challenges, that's kind of a lot to put in your head. But if you ever decided to move further into your teaching career, or if you plan to be a ski instructor, it's kind of nice to have that sort of a background as you get into the higher levels and understand some of the concepts. And if any of you are engineers or ski geeks, and it's neat to watch it again and understand some of this. Don't worry, I'm not going to be talking like that next on Saturday, but it's background information. So let's move along to the next one and get into sort of the fundamentals of everything. So with CADS, you'll hear everywhere AOT, observe, or ask, observe, and test. It's the same principles as the collaborative teaching approach that we use with the Canadian Ski Instructor Alliance. And So I'm gonna and they're using a lot of our terminology now. And so everything you see here on the side, knowing your AOT, the physical stuff, the psychological, the goals, the disability levels, the abilities, it's going to be this is what we're going to be talking about on Saturday. So let's look at this video because it kind of pulls it all together, and then we'll break it down a bit.
It's no secret that the most effective and enjoyable learning environments result from a collaborative relationship between teacher and student. Learners learn best when they're heavily involved in the creation of their own knowledge. Collaborative teaching empowers them to take charge of their own skills progression and offers enormous emotional rewards when they realize that the most satisfying achievements come from within. The collaborative teaching approach views the instructor as a facilitator of learning, while helping to establish optimal conditions for success through a common lesson structure and learning cycle. Knowing your learner is integral to any successful lesson, and it's much more than remembering personal facts about them. It's about discovering what makes them tick, tapping into their individual understanding, inspiration, and goals, and adjusting our approach throughout a lesson as they evolve as a learner. Consider this. A gardener's goal is to provide optimal conditions and appropriate nutrients for the specific needs of different plants. By doing so, they facilitate growth, but the plant itself must do the growing. As a ski instructor, we do the same for our learners. We figure out what the learner needs, and then set about creating environments in which they can grow. The experiences our students move through will influence their progression more than any other factor, and for these to be effective, they should be safe but challenging, achievable, and fun. Some experiences will be directive by nature, others more open, but all are driven by mutually agreed upon objectives. A good instructor primes learners to focus on expected outcomes of tasks and gets them thinking by asking questions which facilitate reflection on the outcomes. They'll assess the student's understanding by watching them ski and through the answers they give as a guide for future task setting. The best instructors quickly identify learning moments, capitalize on successes, and are able to promote optimal growth within the time frame of any lesson. Observing task outcomes is a critical part of an instructor's responsibilities. Assessing the experiences you've built with your learner helps determine if it was the right choice. Here, you're comparing the objective, or what you wanted to have happen, with the outcome, which is what actually happened. There's always a lot of excitement when those two things match, and it can be exhilarating for everyone. Of course, new things don't always go exactly the right way the first time, so being attentive to the outcomes is how you determine what to do next. Do you choose different terrain, a different turn shape, clarify your explanation, or maybe you just give it another go? Development of skills is what gives skiers the ability to ski safer and have more fun through the confidence that comes from control. Few lesson takers are in it to perfect a particular move. Rather, what they want is to realize the benefits of adding something to their toolbox. Exploring the possibilities of new skills gives them context, applicability, and helps develop autonomy for a skier out there on the mountain. For most of us, the more we learn, the more we want to learn. Each time we learn, we change, and the process begins again. It's what makes skiing such an addictive and fulfilling activity for so many.
Thanks, Colin. We'll move along to the next slide. So just as a recap, and it's when we're working with CADS, some of you or a lot of you probably are assigned to one person throughout the year. So developing this kind of collaborative approach is going to work wonders as you get to know your client. And other programs like our Ski Hawks program, there's some nights where you're being matched with somebody else. So you have to start this whole process all over. And this will happen also in ski instructing. You can never expect it's going to be the same person every day. So you're always trying to develop and create this experience. So it becomes a bit harder. So, but for those of you who have one client for the year, this becomes a very rewarding piece. But basically you really got to know your learner. You've got to know your ski environment. When I get to a ski hill and I'm about to teach, I try to get out and do a run, just to understand the snow conditions and see where we're at. Doesn't always happen. I'm always thinking ahead of time based on my learner and their expectations, how I'm going to run. Every single run is a thought process of what I'm going to do with them and how I'm going to do it. And I can go to the hill with a great idea of what I'm going to do in a template, and that could all fall apart because let's say it snowed or they shut down the hill I was going to use, or my client is really upset that day and are not going to want to listen. So there's just so many variables involved in teaching and becoming a really good volunteer and instructor. We're going to go a little bit more into the next slides on the objectives of a lesson and the skills needed. So they talked a bit about the skills. It was kind of embedded in that physics presentation. And then the objectives of the lesson, we'll talk about that next. So if you could sort of jump ahead, Colin. So the skills framework, this is something that is sort of key to running your lesson. And it's, if you look at the red piece in the middle, the decision making, it's a constant decision making process. Every time I get to the top of the hill, I might have to change my decision. But if I'm going up the lift, I might be interacting with my client, but I'm always trying to come up with what am I going to do next. And when I first meet a client, the first thing I do is I need to see how their skis are working on the snow. Are they sliding, skidding? Are they carving? I need to see what that skier is doing to make the ski move. Are they throwing their shoulders around? Are they slipping? They have no edge control. Or are they bouncing? Is there positioning in the back so they have no control of their ski? So I'm looking at the movements and then I'm seeing what's happening to the ski. So it's kind of once you first meet your client, the next step is to really take a look at them and see what's happening. So this framework is kind of a guide that you can use all the time. And we'll play with this on Saturday a bit, where we'll look at other skiers and kind of look at what's happening to their skis and the movement of them. And I'll give you a chance to do some assessments with me on the hill and really get an idea for what I'm looking at and what you would be looking at in your skiers. And they've been starting to use these terms, yaw, pitch, and roll. I don't use these. It's all the basic stuff. It's how are you getting the ski to move? It's which is based on what kind of movements you have, how you control those, rotational movements, how you work your ski, how much you edge it, and then the pressure control, your balance on the ski. This kind of go ahead, Colin. So the skills themselves, the three controls that I'm talking about, pressure control is really, we're talking about balancing on the ski and using your joints in a way to keep earlier in the physics video, saw base of support and center of mass. So base of support is your skis, your boots. Center of mass is your body and where it goes over your ski. So your pressure control really needs to be sort of in the middle of the ski or moving with the ski. But most of us, as we will see pretty well, any skier that's learning how to ski, they don't know how to control their ski or pressure their ski. They're either in the back seat or they might be tipping too far forward, or as they talked about toppling, sometimes they're over toppling. They're really trying to find their balance area. So your biggest job primarily, and I find that even if I teach a 9-week program, I'm constantly trying to get my skiers to learn how to balance properly. We all get thrown off balance. My first 2 days on snow this year, it was a kind of a joke. The very first day, I thought there was something wrong with my skis. There's nothing wrong with my skis. It was the operator. There was something wrong with it. I couldn't get myself balanced. I was a bit of a mess until I got into the afternoon. So that's a pressure control's a big one. Rotational control, any of you who've been around in the ski industry are aware that we need to start our turn with the lower body, but newer skiers who are off balance are going to try to use their upper body to turn. Or skiers that have challenges, physical challenges, or any other challenge, visually impaired, they can't see, so they're off balance that way. You're going to see a lot of shoulder movement, and our role is to try to get them learning how to use their lower body to turn the ski and make it happen, because it's pretty darn hard to turn a ski with your shoulders. And then edging, it's just learning how to eventually get that ski on edge and learning how to use the ski so that they can get better performance out of the ski and control themselves on the slopes. So we'll look at working on those skills and different drills that we can do to improve those skills on our skiers. Next one, Colin. So this is part, I've kind of already alluded to this. When I first meet a skier, it's all about learning about them. I'm looking at physiologically, how are they? Especially if we're working with disabled skiers, I'm asking them, what is their challenge? Maybe how did it happen? I'm trying to get as much information as possible so I understand. I do the same thing with an able-bodied person. If I start with let's say a private lesson, I ask the person anything. Have you had knee surgery recently? Do you have a sore back? I want to know as much about what are their physical limitations before I try to do something with them on the snow. I want to know their psychological orientation. So I want to know, are they scared, nervous, excited? Kind of want to know where they're coming from there. What's their goal and what's their objective? What do they want to learn how to ski? Do they want to learn how to turn? Do they want to go faster? So I'm kind of doing a little AOT checklist. It's all part of my collaborative learning. And once I get as much information as I can on the skier, then I want to see how they ski. So I might take them to a very not challenging slope, something just to see what's happening to them, or I may even just have them see how they walk on their snow. So I'm assessing and looking how they're doing. If I give them a task to do, then I'm going to be looking at how they do it, chatting with them to see how it works, what worked, what didn't, what did you do to cause what you did. So as you see, assess and debrief is a constant part of collaborative teaching. I'll talk a bit more about the development scale on the weekend, but anytime you give somebody a new task, it's initiation. They're learning how to use it. It's like you, even in any other sport, you hand somebody a golf club, initiation is just learning how to hold the golf club and use it. And no one's going to be brilliant at it right away. It may take time before you actually acquire the skill of being able to even putt, let's say. And then when you finally become a putter like Tiger Woods, you've consolidated your skills. You're pretty darn good. So it's the same as skiing. Anytime you give a new task to somebody or get them to try it, you're going to have to expect it's going to take them a while to learn it. And I'll be doing stuff with you guys on Saturday that you might think, what the heck? About maybe giving you a task that might challenge your skiing ability. And it may take you a while before you get it under your belt and think, okay, I'm feeling pretty good with this. And you and I will be able to see if you actually acquire the skill at some point. Some people are faster than others. Some learn faster than others. So this whole assessment piece is crucial to whether or not you move forward with your skier. So let's try the next slide. This is part of the same thing. They talked about it in the video, is let them know what you expect out of them. You can't, here's what I'm going to want to see. I want to see you come down that slope in control. I do not want to see you pick up speed. I'm priming them for what I want to see. They know what I'm expecting from them. And that way, when they stop in front of me, if they did pick up speed or something happened, then we have something to chat about. We can reflect about it. So that's really part of the collaborative approach too. So important to give them an idea of what they're going to expect to feel. And then they'll know while they're doing it, oh, maybe I'm not getting that done. And I can tell you invariably, if I give a drill for somebody not to pick up speed and I see that they're picking up speed, I know right away what's happening, but I want them to tell me what's happening. So it's, of course, your client may be not able to express themselves that way. You may not be able to do it, but priming them and kind of letting them know what you're expecting will help them learn quicker. Sometimes there's a lot of laughs about what happens, but the reflection is a good part of what's going to happen. And then the next video, or next, slide. So I'm just repeating what we said again. You want to know your learner, know your environment. I didn't know Pakenham until last year, so I asked the instructors that I was with, tell me a little bit about the hill, what's going on. I could tell from walking across the snow what the snow is going to be like. It was super busy that day because we had all the CADS training going on for Pakenham. We had clients on the hill. There was only 2 lifts are open. So it was a bit of a zoo, and it was first day of skiing. So you've got snowboarders out there, you've got basically chaos. So you've got to understand where in all that chaos can I run my lesson to make sure that my client is safe. Other things to consider, those are all safety aspects. Also the snow conditions, the weather conditions. Is it foggy? Is it snowing? You got to know before you plan your lesson what you're dealing with. You want to know the objectives. So we're going to talk about objectives next, but you want to know what you're going to do with the client. You don't want to go in and just say, we're going to learn 15 things. You want to go in with one objective. The objective might change based on what they learned and how they've learned it. Let's say my objective was just to make sure that they were comfortable slowing down on the slope. So I might give them some turning drills. If they really knock that out of the park, then I might move them to a steeper hill and then try that again. The objective might change. Then maybe I want to, instead of teaching them how to turn, I might want to focus a little bit more on speed management. So I change my objective, but it's basically based on my initial discussions with the client and what I see, what I observe. And this picture is actually one of ours from Ski Hawk. So you've got a guide in the back and a skier in the front. The guide's telling them where to turn. The front person is visually impaired. And then finally the skills, that's the rotation stuff, the edging, the pressure control, the balance. So every task, I'm focusing on a skill level, I'm focusing on an objective, and every task I'm looking at my environment, and I should say run, and I'm looking to also see my learner. As we all know with CADS, we're watching our clients and skiing, we're watching to make sure they're not cold, they're not upset. Are they looking stiff now? Are they looking really tired? Are they starting to fall? So that's all part of what's going on. Let's move on to the next slide, Colin. So here are the objectives. So we'll be going through all of this. Anybody who had ever been around the Ski Alliance in the past years, we call it fast track to parallel, but it's basically getting to, and you're going to have to know this for your CADS courses when you're being examined for your level 1 in the future. They're going to want to know that you're going to be able to move through these objectives with a client and be able to get them to a point where you can demonstrate parallel skiing to them or get them. They may not get there, but you have to know how to teach that or be able to demonstrate that. So we'll work on that on Saturday too. Mobility, it's a funny word with the Ski Alliance. In this case, it's all about getting your skier on the snow, making sure they know how to put on their boots, making sure they know how to put on their skis. Can they walk on the snow? Can they just kind of shuffle their feet? How can they fall and get up? Teaching them that. It's teaching them how to just get comfortable on the equipment before you even move forward on the hill. It also means let's say you're always having them on green runs, it's being able to give them the skill levels to be able to move to a blue run. So they're talking more about a mobility experience that's related to knowing your equipment and knowing your hills. But also with CADS, we're talking mobility as far as the client and their joints, their movement, their physical disadvantages. We're looking at that also and just seeing how they're managing that, because that's going to base everything on what we do. You may be doing a mobility type exercises for 2 or 3 weeks before you can get your client up the hill, or before you get your client moving to a point where they're turning and stopping. But it's crucial. I can get a group of 20 in front of me and see right away which ones I'm going to have difficulties with. And it's all based on how they even just walk out there in their ski boots. So it's a matter of observation, asking, giving them some easy tasks to do. Maybe it's just walking around in circles on the skis, on one ski, two skis, to get them to the point where you can then get them gliding. And gliding, that's what we love to do in skiing. We like to go fast, we like to move. Gliding could be just introducing this on a very, very shallow slope. So you could start them on a bit of a slope and then just let them glide forward to a point where they can stop, which is kind of cool. If they'll get the idea of what it's like to balance on the ski. You may be able to, at that point, discern whether or not they are balanced on their ski and give them some ideas or drills of how to hold their hands. So gliding can also be things like teaching them how to skate on skis. And just kind of getting comfortable at. I've done it with little races, especially with kids, line them all up and they could just use their poles and try to pull forward to try to go across the finish line, but it's teaching them how to glide, how to move the ski. Because someone who's really scared, they won't glide. They'll keep trying to stop the ski. So you got to kind of get that feeling. Speed control that's pretty obvious, teaching them how to turn to slow down, stop. Snow plows, different exercises for that. That's a big objective. And then direction change, how to change direction. That video on physics talked about steering angle, and that's a key piece in teaching people how to slow down, is how to turn the ski so that it slows down the ski. So those are kind of objectives. When I go to the hill, I could observe a group and decide what my objective is going to be. Oh, geez, I'm going to have to work on direction change on that guy because he's not completing his turns. Or, geez, I'm going to work on speed control on that guy because he's going too fast. He doesn't know how to turn. He doesn't know how to stop. So that's all kind of part of the decision making. I know this is a lot of information, but it will all come together as we stand together on snow and assess people together. So that's just kind of a little bit of a synopsis of ski objectives. Next slide, Colin. Yeah. If any, I guess I'm assuming that most of you have had some experience with CADS, and I don't know if you've had experience with anger management with any of your athletes, but it happens on a ski hill a lot. I've seen it a lot in my ski instructor days, especially with kids or with people that have disabilities, that they're in a lot of cases, they're scared, they're nervous. This is something new. If they're a teenager, they may be embarrassed. There's a lot of stuff that can trigger anger, a lot of it sometimes is frustration in themselves, and it's quite a cycle. So you have to kind of, there could be a trigger that you'll eventually get to know with that person, or if the father or the mother or the parent were nice enough to come and tell you these are the triggers for my son or daughter, then you can understand might happen if that something it goes, and it can escalate. You can get pretty scary. They're screaming, they're yelling, they're crying, they're lying on the ground, and everything then seems to dissipate, and then it re-triggers and it goes again. It happened to me once 2 years ago with a 3-year-old. I took her up the magic carpet, and at the top of the magic carpet, and this sounds really stupid, and you'll think, what kind of instructor is she? I forgot that I didn't have skis on. I had been chasing her up and down the hill without skis on because it was easier to manage her. And it just blew out of my mind. I didn't have skis on. So at the top, she stopped short at the top of the magic carpet, and I ran into her. So we fell together. We bundled up, and we were laughing and giggling. And then her brother went by and made fun of her. And she started to scream and yell, and she was embarrassed. And I was hugging her and holding her and trying to calm her down, and she was just out of control. We started talking about Walt Disney and cartoon characters, and she was good again. And then we got going again, and then her mom and dad walked by, and then she went right back into the cycle again. So it was quite the affair. I was traumatized, not only for being so stupid, but just watching this whole thing happen with a 3-year-old made me realize this is something that can happen to any of us, and it's just something to be aware of and stay calm. It can be scary. I haven't seen it a lot with my clients visually impaired, but I have seen it with some of the ones that have a bit of autism. Some of our clients are like that, and sometimes it's a matter of just sitting them down on the side of the hill and letting them get through their emotions before we continue. Sometimes it means taking them back in the lodge. So I just threw that in because that was a traumatic piece, but it's a common thing in teaching skiing. well, not super common, but it happens. Number 13, Colin. Moving along, it's quite fast. So I'm going to recap a bit and go back. Can you go back to slide 5, Colin? So I just kind of recap before we move forward. So we're almost done, but basically getting to the hill in collaborative teaching, working with our CADS way of saying collaborative teaching, or the AOT, where you get to know your learner, ask a lot of questions, observe, take a look at how they're skiing, look and see whether they are skiing, look and see how they are on snow or on their skis, and give them a task and test them, and then from there determine what you want to do. So you can't just throw somebody into a lesson and just say, ski down the hill, do this. You have to understand what's going on with them first. And I saw that one year where I was supervising up at Camp Fortune, and there was a whole bunch of little kids headed out on the hill. They were probably all 5 or 6 with quite an experienced instructor. And he was at the top. I don't know if anybody knows Camp Fortune, but they were stuck at the top. One of his kids was stuck at the top of Marshall, and the rest had made it down the steeper section. So they were down the bottom, down with him playing. And the other little girl was up top screaming and yelling and crying. And he was standing there saying, come on, come on. And I went up to him and said, what are you doing? What's going on? Why is she up there? Well, she told me that she could ski Marshall. And I said, you believed her? You've never met her before in your life. This is the first lesson. This is the first time you're coming downhill with all these kids, and you believe them? It's never believe your skier up front. Get to know them. Even if it's an adult, it doesn't matter who it is. Start them on easy terrain. Get to know them so that you can create an experience. Once you know your learner, you'll know the environment to choose. You can think about whether you want them to be learning how to just move on the skis, glide, whether they need to learn how to change direction better, whether they need how to manage their skis, or pick an objective. You don't have to do them all. And then pick a skill that you think is going to make that objective easier. So it's a matter of direction change. Perhaps just having them better balance on their ski is going to make it super easy for them. So you just work on the skill of pressure control. And once you do a task, you show them the task, you assess it with them, you get some feedback from them. Of course, you've primed them on what to expect. And then if they've knocked it out of the park, then maybe make it a bit more challenging. Get them into a more challenging slope, or make them go faster, or perhaps make their turn shape different. And if they don't manage that, go back and try it again, or give them something else that's going to help them do that. So it's a real teaching skiing. It's all experimental, and it's individual, and it's a lot of fun. So that's a whole lot of information jammed down your throats. You can go back and look at this video, or look at this presentation on the CADS NCD site. And we're going to be reviewing this all day on Saturday, so it's not going to be thrown down it, but that's basically the template. They're creating the experience that I'll be doing, and we'll be talking the skills framework, be talking about amongst ourselves. And my plan on Saturday is to not only work with you on your own skiing, if I feel we can look at each other's skiing and use each other as examples from time to time. We can look at people on the slopes. We'll look at other people on the snow and see what we want to do with it. And we're going to do a lot of practice teaching, so you guys can get ideas on how to work with a client on maybe how to get them more mobile on the slopes, how to get them turning better, how to get them stopping better. So as much as possible, we're going to be doing a lot of teaching. In 5 hours, that's a big task. And I'll shape the day according to what works best for you guys too. So when we meet on Saturday, we can sort of chat before we get out on the snow about your objectives. And I'll be asking a little bit about you, just to make sure we don't have any injuries or things happening. And then we'll get on snow and start working together on learning how to teach, basically. Has anybody here had teaching experience other than CADS? No, and how many? I shouldn't, I'll ask you all this on Saturday. It's too hard to do it on a Zoom call. Right now, before I go any further, any questions? You're all kind of overwhelmed. Is it overwhelming? Does this make sense? Any sort of nods or?
Just one quick question. You were saying we can get hold of, or we can look at this slide presentation. Well, would that be on the CADS site?
So this is Colin. Yes, my plan is tomorrow I will load up this a video of this evening's session and a copy of these slides to on the CADS NCD site. There is a page called Getting Certified, and then there's a page called something like Resources.
I think it's under resources. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where I found a lot of the stuff.
Right now, you could go there and you could see last year's slides and last year's the video of the equivalent of the last year's version of this session. Tomorrow, I will update those.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's not much of a difference between last year and this year. We've changed a bit of the lingo because of changes with the Alliance, and the skills framework is something newer that we threw in. But otherwise, it's the same. It's knowing that creating the experience, that big circle of the collaborative teaching, that's kind of the key to it all. And I'll try to make it as easy as possible on the weekend.
There's a couple of questions in on the chat. Carolyn, Gord asks, anyone know what the conditions are?
I guess not.
I guess not. I mean, the weather forecast for tomorrow is warm. So I'm thinking it is more likely to be a little bit slushy than icy. Gord says, I'll bring my rock skis. That's probably a good idea at this time of year. Jen says, do you need a fake student for us to get us practicing on? She's also raised her hand.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure actually if the information for Saturday is anywhere to be found, but like, it's at Pakenham, we meet at the lodge somewhere.
Yeah, I'll tell you that. Why don't we zip over to slide 13 and I'll get back to you about the fake student thing.
Okay, it's just my daughter's 12 and she, I'm probably gonna have to take her with me. She skis, I don't know if she could.
Yeah, she's gonna tag along, sure.
Okay, we could practice on her.
Well, you could, yeah, and we can ask her. Maybe I can even prime her a bit and make her do things that you guys don't know about.
Yeah, and she signed up for her pre-instructor at Edelweiss this winter, so
okay,
maybe that's good practice for her.
From what I see, there's 8 of us on Saturday, but that's fine. We can work it in.
Okay.
So we'll go to slide 13. Oh, here we are, day on snow. Just a sec, I got chat in the middle of my face here. That's the mighty Pakenham. Has anybody ever skied Pakenham before here?
Once.
Once?
A very long time ago.
Yeah, it's a super friendly place, really nice. Last year was my second time. The first time was probably about 30 years before that. We're going to be, so as we say, our day on snow, reviewing the Zoom session points. I talk about building our toolboxes. That's basically I'm going to be giving you as many tools, tactics, suggestions, whatever I can do to help you with getting your clients to edge better, to not turn with their shoulders, to have better pressure control and balance on their skis. So my toolbox is pretty huge after 25 or more years of teaching, but I would suggest actually I have some extra cards. I can give you some little index cards to write notes, because I have a whole book that's divided up into the different areas of skills that I go to sometimes when I'm planning lessons with, especially if I have a group for 9 weeks or something, I want to pull something out of my hat that's different. So I every time I get instructed, if I go to a course, I take all sorts of notes and ideas because they really help me when I'm dealing with somebody. Let's say I'm struggling with somebody, they're just not able to manage it. I can go back into my notes and then think, oh yeah, that might work. So it's just a great reference. And if you're going to be working with skiers for a long time, it's nice to have those things to pull out of your hat. And there's things I pull out of my hat now sometimes that I've never even done, I've never even thought of, and then I'll write those down thinking, wow, that was pretty good. It'll be a very collaborative session. We're going to be sharing with each other, talking a lot. So we've all had experiences with CADS, so I'm going to be pulling that in a lot. So I want to know about how you manage things, what you've done to make things work. We're going to learn from each other about what works with different types of clients, with different types of disabilities. And as we said, we'll have lots of opportunity to teach. And if you want feedback on your skiing, happy to give it. I'll probably do it anyway, as indirectly, because that's just in me to try to help you ski better. And if you don't want that, let me know. It's a busy day, as I said, take notes. So slide 14, I'll talk. So the lodge itself, they're going to be, if you look at the route, where the parking is sort of at the base here on the bottom, and on the right, you'll see Algonquin room. That's the CADS room at Pakenham. So you go in the front door where it says door to car park. And if you hang a right and then another right, you'll go into the Algonquin room. I'll be in there and I'll have tickets for you. You can also go, if you want, you can have a change in there if there's room, because there'll be other CADS instructors getting ready to go out and do their training. There's also a cafeteria over to the left, washrooms. We'll be meeting, if you pass the ticket desk and go forward where it says door to slopes, we'll be meeting out there. There's a bunch of ski racks. You can stick your skis there, and we'll meet in a circle outside, but you'll see me in the Algonquin room. I plan to be there for 8, and I'd like us to be ready to roll by 9, outside, ready to walk to the lift for 9 so that we can take full advantage of the day. And I'm sure it'll be busy. And so we want to make sure we can get as many runs as possible. You don't need to buy tickets. This is free, Jen, and you'll get the tickets from me. And I would suggest you can bring a lunch or you can buy your food in the cafeteria. Last year, we all agreed to just half an hour lunch so we could get out earlier, leave at 3:30. So a suggestion you can bring a lunch and you can leave everything in the Algonquin room. They have hooks on the walls and there's lots of space there to put stuff. And they're very receptive. And I think in the next slide, I think is the resources slide, expectations. Okay, the expectations, we'll go back a slide. This is all stuff I pulled out of the CADS manual of what's expected for you to do your CADS level 1. So this piece of methodology is part of the CADS level 1 so that you have a more comfortable idea or better idea of how to manage a lesson with your clients. It used to be a full 2-day course when I did it. When I did my CADS level 1 and CADS level 2, the methodology was a full day, 2 full days. But basically, they'll want you to understand some of the terminology, methodologies. And if you go on, under resources, you'll see I don't have it sitting in front of me. It's the newest version of what they want from you. Don't know if you have that already posted, Colin, on the site.
I don't think so. The newest version of like the marking grids for level 1, that's being kind of presented this weekend. There's a thing called the Eastern Pre-Course where our certifiers have gone to get their annual update. So we'll have the updated version of the marking grids next week.
But basically on the marking grid, I've seen it. I just don't have the final version of it yet. You have to be able to demonstrate an ability to teach using the knowledge and techniques outlined in your CADS manual, but it's basically all the stuff I've talked about. You have to be able to demonstrate that you're asking your client, you're getting to know your client, you're getting to understand them, and that you're choosing the right objective or the right skill to help them. So they're going to be looking for that over the period of, keep in mind, to do your CADS level 1, you've got all sorts of modules to do. So you're going to have lots of opportunity to get better at this. This is just kind of a quick course to kind of get you thinking in that direction. So they're going to look to make sure, as I said, that you select the right goals and tactics for ski development. And they actually want you in there. There's 8 things they want you to be able to do. And I've kind of consolidated it here as ski backwards, link your turns on a green run, do hockey stops, wedge turns, be able to introduce parallel skiing. There's a few more things that are more related to working with the sit ski and working with the 3-track and 4-track, and those sort of things will go along as you do your modules. Slide 16. These are just pulled. These are other things that were pulled directly from the marking grid. Make sure you're clear, concise. Safety is huge. We'll be talking safety all day on Saturday. Duty of care is another big important piece that we'll be talking about. And talking about the lifts, we're going to be working on that Saturday. And then also, as I said here, including the critical points from the AOT. A presentation. You can't be a good instructor or a good volunteer or guide unless you got a right attitude and you're keen and you're friendly. And none of you would be here on this Zoom call unless you were, because those of us who have decided to join CADS and work with the clients, you guys are special people, and it's wonderful that you're doing this. And like myself, when I first started working with the skiers that were blind or visually impaired, I didn't know any of this stuff. I wasn't an instructor yet at skiing. I only became an instructor after a couple years of doing this and realizing that I want to be able to be better for my clients, and I want to be able to be a better volunteer. And then from there, I started teaching skiing as well as getting my levels in CADS. So it's wonderful when folks want to come out and spend their time to do this. So I thank everybody here for doing this. La prochaine. Colin, is there one more? Is there one more, Colin? I think there is. Oh, this is just I think it looks a bit, that's the resources page, yeah, pulled off from the site. So
yeah, so from the top, you'll click on training, and then on the left-hand side, instructor training resources. And you will see things like the level 1 resources. You can see there a link to the video on physics of skiing, the video on collaborative teaching. We've put a lot of information up there. You don't have to read it all. You don't have to know it all backwards. But for those of us who like that style of learning, you can go there and find something interesting and hopefully educational any day.
I think in there somewhere, it's sort of faint. There's a whole bunch of tips, and I'm going to be bringing some with me to the ski hill. So I actually have handouts that I'll give you afterwards, which with all the stuff I'm teaching, where all the tips, the kind of skills and drills and those kind of things. I think it's in here. I've updated it slightly, but that's something too you can take a peek at if you want. But otherwise, I'll be giving you something on Saturday. And the next one is the final, I think. Questions. Lots of information. Any questions? Any more questions? Oh.
I went on the Pakenham site, and it looks like 3 runs. They say 50 centimeters base of machine groom granular snow on the loop, exhibition, and the carpet.
Oh, great.
It's snowmaking on standby, waiting for cooler temperatures. So I guess those are the only runs that are open right now. And the weather's supposed to be like +2.
Yeah, don't worry. For the stuff we do, and we'll be doing a lot of stuff working with beginners. You get pretty hot doing that kind of stuff. So bring stuff that you can peel off if you get too hot, or jackets that have openings in them. Or there could be me that's doing all the demonstrations, so I'll just be getting hot, but we'll work it together. Okay, well, that's all I have. I hope that gives you kind of a general impression of what we're going at. People last year found it was just helpful to have that sort of in the back of their head, so that when I was talking and we're doing it actually physically, that it kind of sinks in a little bit easier.